moving further. Progressive ideas are getting bigger and bigger because progressives keep winning Democratic primaries all across the country. Just as Democrats within the United States Congress, it's only getting bigger. Ilhan Omar, Pramila Jayapal, AOC, now Mondaire Jones, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, who defeated Mr. Clay and the Clay family, a Democratic dynasty, a black Democratic dynasty there in Missouri. Just as Democrats is only getting bigger, extremely bigger. Why is it only getting bigger? Why is it expanding? In some of the most rural conservative areas too, another thing in our country. Why is it expanding? It's expanding because they're running on the 5 pillars of the progressive movement. What are the 5 pillars of the progressive movement? 1, universal basic income, an income that's guaranteed every single month. And as I've talked about before in the democratic socialistic principles in a previous video from months ago, universal basic income merely stimulates the American people. This is nothing anybody can live on in any way, shape, or form, but it's something that can help stimulate an idea that one might come up with that they want to do in terms of their life or contributing and giving back to the country and society. That's all it does. And what is the amount of universal basic income? It's anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000. That's it, literally. To help stimulate one, to help them perhaps get up on their feet, maybe help them out, or even, like I say, contribute to capitalism and creating ownership and brandsmanship, entrepreneurship within our country. That's all it does. And like I always like to say, Martin Luther King was an advocate of universal basic income himself. So this isn't just something that's too far of a Marxist idea or a communistic idea that a lot of people would like to paint it out to be. I just laugh at you. 2, a federal jobs guarantee. What do I mean by a federal jobs guarantee? A federal job, something that the United States can provide to one to perhaps help them in a time of crisis or need. If you can get a federal job, just apply through our federal government, and they'll put you wherever in the sector that you're needed the most. That could be rebuilding the infrastructure of the country with construction jobs, contracted with the US government, perhaps a municipal or wherever it is that you live, your county, helping giving back any way you can, but be a federal job. We're gonna create new jobs with our clean energy sector. We have an actual progressive elected, so any progressive elected will automatically create jobs in that sector, which could be federal jobs given to folks who need them. So there's lots of ways that people can be enhanced through a federal jobs guarantee and to help contribute and give back to our society on top of their need of an actual job. Next, a $15 minimum wage. I don't know anyone who can survive on $7.15 and raise a family and actually have a sustainable, habitable life. I don't think that exists in America. But the people who fight against $15 an hour, they're merely trying to keep in place and prop up a system that has only enhanced their well-being and kept them on top of people who have a disaffection for those who haven't gotten to the level that they are at in terms of life, even though that the people at the bottom of the food chain, they're doing everything they can within their power and their grasp to get to that same level and ordeal. But yet you have people who argue against such an idea, which is ludicrous. We haven't had a minimum wage increase in about 2 or 3 decades. That's insanity. A $15 minimum wage that will obviously go with that federal job guarantee on top of every single job in the country. Medicare for all. We all pay into Medicare right now as I speak. So all Medicare for all does is turn your single payer into actual health care. We all are already paying into it. So it's already socialism, whether if you like it or not. You just don't have access to it until you're older. Allow everyone to have access to health care, because here's the thing. Anything can happen to any of us at any point in time, no matter what. Our health is not guaranteed to us, which is why it is a privilege. So if anything happens to us at any point in time, most people, which is going on right now in this country as I speak, cannot pay for their health care. And when they can't pay for it, they go into debt. And when you go into debt, you can't pay for your rent. When you can't pay for your rent, you can't have a place to stay. And when you don't have a place to stay, you're out on the street. Not only out on the street, but you have a bad health condition. So that's what healthcare does to people in the United States when people can't pay their healthcare costs, simply because there's an incentive to become wealthy off of this in terms of the healthcare industry. Medicare for all, which is actually one of the top issues in the progressive cause and the progressive movement, because it is ludicrous how people are dying and some folks picking and choosing on whether or not they want to pay for their health care or pay for their rent. When you have people not telling their families that they're low on insulin because they're afraid of the healthcare cost and the burden they will put on their family. And really, this is what Ted Kennedy wanted. This is what he vouched for. This is what he really wanted in terms of universal health care. This is what he was really talking about. Not that lame duck, conservative, Heritage Foundation written bill, Obamacare. Not that. Legalize all drugs. Legalize every single drug in this country. And what do I mean when I say that? Have regulation on hardcore drugs in the sense of let's control the way that it is ingested and taken and distributed across our country. And what do I mean by that? Turn hardcore drugs more so into a pill form style of a drug and take away the addictive factor in nature out of it in terms of physical dependence, which is how addiction is created. Take that property out and take those aspects out in terms of a healthier way to use, because there's always going to be people who do drugs on a daily basis, and this is why we always have a drug problem. There's uppers and downers within these hardcore drugs, which are the real drugs, and people like to have these type of highs. There's many people who actually are functional on these type of drugs, but you'll never know. But there's others that abuse them so much to where that's all they care about, literally, and that's an astronomical amount of people in our country. Do that, turn it into a pill form, turn them into pill forms, and take the addictive nature out of all of them, and only have distribution done by the federal government, but at a reasonable rate. No regulation with cannabis, obviously. The black market must thrive with that, because the black market has always been the reason why this cannabis cultivation has spread, I should say, in terms of these hippie, progressive places in our country. That's how they have been that, because of the black market. So allow the black market to thrive and to stay in place, because they're the backbone. They have entrepreneurial instincts and ability to move such really a medicinal type of substance across our country. Those are the 5 pillars of the progressive movement in our country, and this is the reason why more progressives are winning. This is the reason why in a couple years, 2022 will be a big midterm type of year. We'll take even more seats and we'll have even more progressives in Congress. We're not gonna lose the House. Nancy Pelosi, she's not just gonna become the Speaker of the House and give it right back. That's not what's about to happen. So if the Democrats keep the speakership in the House of Representatives, they're going to win. They're going to win. There's just no other way to put that. Because if you follow that same map on top of increased turnout because of a presidential year, which Joe Biden has brought out more Democrats more now than at any other point in time in American history. More people aren't acknowledging that. The Democratic primaries have shown that. He has more Democrats that have voted in a primary than at any point in time in American history. People aren't seeing that. Yeah, it's Uncle Joe. His enthusiasm isn't as same as the Trump movement, but the Trump movement isn't as big as the Democratic base. I keep saying this. We're gonna have more progressives in Congress eventually throughout the Biden administration. And like I said, the Biden administration will be primaried, and there's no telling how many progressives we'll have in Congress by 2024. And once we finally have a majority in Congress, we can finally start to actually craft progressive legislation, or in the long run, put more pressure on the establishment Democrats in Congress. But we're gonna have to take it from them, because they're not gonna do it themselves. They're just not. So we're gonna have to take it from them. And it will perhaps be by 2026, I predict. By then, the Democrats, the progressive Democrats, should start to form a majority in the United States Congress. 2024, we'll certainly get close against President Kamala Harris. We'll be battling against President Kamala Harris, and progressives will be trying to take the presidency from them so we can enact and pass our legislation to have a more sustainable life for all of our people. Because the corporate establishment, elitist, deep state Democrats, they're not going to do this on their own. They're just all talk, no actual progressive policies that actually enhance the American people. Just small incremental change. I wonder why they get killed like this, because they don't have a lot of presidential victories like the Republican Party does.